It is the first week in February. Let's start the analysis for the week. Of course, we'll start with pound New Zealand dollar. We closed up 551 pips last week, and we are approaching our high from last year's, the weekly. You can see we hit 2.1 and moved away from it sharply, but now we've broken back up above the bear trend line that formed from there a substantial amount. Let's go down to 4 hour and take a look. So of course we can look for counter trades. When we hit weekly resistance 1, we may see a spike up there, possibly almost to WR2. But I don't expect 2.1 to break on the first shot. It's been a while since we hit that level. We've only touched it once. Potentially, if we don't start moving up right away in the week, we could get a shallow pullback to the weekly pivot and a trade from there. It's not my preferred trade. I would rather see price move up to WR1 and then get a short signal from there and take profit at the weekly pivot. And then potentially we have a long setup for our hopefully second run at 2.1, but possibly we'll pull back first to the 61.8 fib, which the daily or the 4 hour 55 should move up, so we should get an intersection there. Possibly we'll see super convergence zones start to form there as price gets closer. All right, so pound CAD, we moved up again a substantial amount here. You can see that we have an active super convergence zone, and we're right around last week's high, midterm fib. So either a reversal from there for a counter trend trade, possible spike up to WR1, and then a break back below that area to short. Potential longs with the trend, we could pull back to the weekly pivot as the first zone. I would look at that more if we move up first. Otherwise, potential pullback to meet the 4 hour 55. Pound odd, of course, continuing the up move for the pound last week. This one not up quite as much, about 350 pips compared to the first few pairs we looked at. You can see we have a very strong super convergence zone this week. Don't see very many 7+ super convergence zones. So I do have this on 20 for a range. So basically, the high up here is still going to be part of that super convergence zone if you're looking at that. Any move into this without a solid break above the fib, we get a rejection. It'll be pretty strong counter trend trade. We could see potentially a larger pullback. Look for anywhere in the 61.8 down to this monthly pivot, and of course we'll have the 4 hour 5, 4 hour 55 come up into that area. So that's my plan for the pound odd. All right, pound yen. Pound yen. We got held down, it looks like, by US yen. I haven't looked at that chart yet, but pound moved up generally across the board, so we'll figure that the USD portion of this pair held price down. So what we have is we have touched the, get rid of that, we've touched the 4 hour or the daily 200 at this point this week. We can look for a short from there back below the weekly pivot to make new lows, or potentially we can see a break back up, and I will look to short again as we meet the convergence of the daily 55 and the 4 hour 200. I won't look to long until we break that area. All right, pound USD, we closed up last week, but we're still in possibly a downtrend. We may be forming a bottom in this area, but it's a little bit early to tell. Of course, we're only looking at a 4-hour chart. So we are currently at the 4-hour 55 and the weekly pivot. So if we see a push into there and then a rejection, I'll look to short. Otherwise, I would prefer a pullback to the 4-hour 200. You can see that the Dynafibs worked nicely last week, but we never pushed back down to our previous low. So I think it's likely that we'll try to make an attempt higher to the 4-hour 200. Euro New Zealand dollar. If we start the week moving down, you look for bounces between the daily 55 and the weekly pivot. Like if we started the week moving up, I will look for a reason to short around the daily 200. EuroCAD, we broke the daily 200 last week. We had an attempted breakout the week before that. So I'm not super excited to take a long on this pair. What I will look for is a pullback back to this daily 200, and then we'll see where price action goes from there. I'll probably look at this on at least the 1-hour time frame. I doubt I'll take a 5-minute trade from it, but I'll look for 1-hour confirmation that we're putting pressure into and rejecting the 4-hour or break, pullback, and short. All right, Euro AUD. This is a little messy, but we've got the 4-hour fib, which is the yellow one, yellow fib. I'm leaving that on there now just for testing reasons. But I fibbed the daily from last month's high, or actually December's high to January's low. If you look last week, we touched the 50% fib of the longer term fib. So what I would like to see is a move back below these daily EMAs for short, below the daily 400 and daily 55. All right, Euro JPY, we closed up a little bit, so the fib is from the daily. So I would like to short from the 4-hour 55 WR1 combination. That would be an attempted run at last week's high, basically. Potentially, if we break that, we could get a move up to WR2, which will probably be in the 4-hour bands. I'll look to short from there as well. On New Zealand dollar, we moved back above all the EMAs at the beginning of last week. So it looks like we may have some decent upwards pressure. We're currently sitting on the weekly pivot, and we've got super convergence zone there that's weakening, but we could see potential trade today to long from there. If we do break below, we don't have a whole lot further, but I'll look to trade off of the 255, of course, and you can see that we made a whole bunch of attempts to get down there towards the end of last week and failed to get below there every time. So I'll look for a long in those areas. On CAD, we've already started to make a move up from the weekly pivot and the 4-hour 55. So early in the week, like today or probably today, look for a move back down to that weekly pivot and then a bounce up. Otherwise, be looking for a counter trend around WR2, which is a high from a couple weeks ago. Potentially, if we break that, I'll definitely look for a spike above WR2, but we could break it and continue on up to WR3. JPY, we've started to make a move back up. First area of interest, of course, is the weekly pivot, which is just above 92. See if we get a short early in the week from there. If we do break above, then look for a short from the 4-hour 55 a little bit later in the week. AUD USD, pretty much the same story. Early in the week, look for a move down from the weekly pivot, the 4-hour 55 if we break above there. New Zealand dollar versus the CAD, I've fibbed the daily for this for long, and you can see that we were right at the weekly pivot and 50% fib. We started to move up from there, broke the 4-hour 55. I'll look for a move back down, and as long as we don't break below the 2 pivots that are right there, look for a move back up above the 4-hour 55 for a long. New Zealand dollar JPY, pretty much the same as the rest of the yens. Early in the week, I'll look for a rejection of the weekly pivot. If we get there and have a hard time moving back down, break above it, look for price to hit the 4-hour 55 and take a short from there. At that point, we should be 4-hour 55 should converge with WR1 on this pair. New Zealand dollar USD, pretty much the same story. We've got a midterm fib, a weekly pivot right there. We're looking for a short from there. If not, we'll see the 4-hour 55, which by then should be a convergence with the 61.8 fib. So we're looking for shorts from those levels. USD CAD, again, pretty similar positioning to a lot of the other pairs. We've got a super convergence zone forming, potential spike up to WR1 at the beginning of the week for a counter short. If we don't continue to move up, look for price to come back to the weekly pivot before moving up. If we do move up first, we're looking like this, then our counter short take profit will be the weekly pivot. However, to re-enter a long, I would prefer that price hit the 4-hour 55. USD JPY, we've made a significant move up already and touched the 4-hour bear Dynafib and 55. 200 is up there as well. Fundamentally, I still think this pair should be moving along. However, we've been continuing to the short side. So if price action warrants it, we could see a potential short from the EMAs. However, that's going to be a little bit more risky, I believe. What I would prefer to see is a solid break above WR1 118. I'll pull back to 118 and then along. You can see we've got a downtrend line that coincides with that. So that's a lot of stuff to break through. If we do break through it and then pull back into it and start to move higher again, I think that'll provide us with a pretty good long trade. Euro USD, we closed higher last week, so fib here is from the daily and also fib the last 2 weeks, which gives us better Fibonacci area. So look for pullback to 50% fib in the 4-hour 55, potential spike up to WR1 anywhere in that area. Look for confirmation back below the 4-hour 55 for a short. All right, happy trading, everybody.